Welcome to mehminipainting. Today I'm going to be reviewing TurboDORK Metallic Paint. So I purchased this paint at a friendly local gaming store, which unfortunately wasn't very local. I was on a trip for my day job and went by a few gaming stores to stock up on my store reviews. I put those up on the Miniature Painting Facebook page every Friday, FLGS Fridays. So I was in the store and I ran across TurboDORK, which I had heard of before but I had never actually used. I figured I would pick it up and try it out. So this is the Malum Malus, a metallic iridescent green color. If you look at the paint in the dropper, it just looks green, almost like a sickly green color. I like the label because it has their website on it and instructions for best usage, which a lot of paint doesn't have. For most vibrant results, apply over a black undercoat. So it looks like there's a misprint on the label. But it does recommend 3 to 5 thin layers with an airbrush or hand brush. And when you shake it up, which it is a metallic, so you want to make sure you shake it really, really well. But when you shake it up, you can hear a agitator inside, which is nice. And, dropper bottles are always the way to go. Now I have used this bottle on a few different models at this point, but I'm going to play with it a little and see kind of how it looks doing different things. So here we have a towel Riptide that I got off eBay that I'm doing for a series on saving badly painted minis. And you can see that I primed it a few different colors. So this is all Vallejo primer to try to keep apples to apples. The left side is black, the bottom white quadrant is gray, and the top right quadrant is white, even though the gray and the white look pretty similar. And I applied all of those with an airbrush. The bottle says that it's most vibrant under a black undercoat, but that may not be an option for all people for some reason. Maybe they don't have black. So I'm going to go over the black, the gray, and the white in order to see how they all look in comparison to each other. And I'm going to do some with an airbrush and some with a hand brush in order to see how they compare. Now, if you use it with an airbrush, you're going to need to thin it down. It actually is an interesting consistency. It isn't as thin as an air paint, but it isn't as thick as most regular mini paints. So I also increased pressure just a little bit. It's around 20 psi when the air is flowing. So you can see from my glove where I've been using it, and you can see that it actually airbrushes very smooth. So I'm going to airbrush the body, and I'm going to hand brush the legs and the arms to just see the results all together. And as I said, it applies very, very smoothly. The way it goes on kind of reminds me of like a Vallejo metal color. It behaves just like that, so if you're familiar with them, it should be a good experience for you. And even with just one coat on the black, you can really see it. On the white, you can see that it's there, but it really has no coverage. On the gray, it's a little interesting. It looks a little bit more green than it does over the white or the black. And the black with just one coat, it still shows the undercoat depending on the angle, but man, it's definitely there. Okay, so this is the second coat on the Riptide, using just the airbrush portion. It is starting to get that iridescent quality on the second coat, or with the second coat on the white and the gray, but it really looks way better over the black. Okay, airbrush third coat. And you can really see a world of difference with the different color primers. If you're one of those people who primes everything white or everything gray, this paint will work for you, but you're going to have to use a bunch of coats just to compare it to that black. The bottle says 3 to 5 coats, so I'm going to do the minimum 3 and stop. And I'm really barely touching the black with this third coat, but I'm having to use a bunch more with the white and gray because sometimes I can't even actually tell if there's much paint on those at all. And after this third coat, they are starting to tie in together with the black, but the difference is noticeable. So if all you have is gray or white, you can do it, but the black's going to save you a bunch of time and coats. With that being said, the lighter undercoat does look a little bit more green compared to the black, which has more of like a aged tarnished gold type of appearance. Now I'm going to use a hand brush, as the bottle calls it. So here's a dry palette. You don't want to use a wet palette with metallics. And as I start to use this, it really reminds me of brushing with a wash. It tints the black and really pools in the low spots, but it feels really foamy, for lack of a better word. And it feels like it's going to show brush marks using a hand brush. So that bottom right leg is gray, and I'm going to use it on the leg plate and the foot. And for the white, I'm going to do the shield part of the riptide. So with one coat with a hand brush on the white, you can tell that it's there. The gray is a little bit stronger, especially depending on the angle, but just like with the airbrush, you have way more coverage over the black. Okay, second coat using the hand brush. I said before that this paint has an interesting consistency. It's too thick to airbrush straight out of the bottle, but it pools in the recesses like a shade or a wash, even though it gives a pretty good coverage over the black with using a hand brush. So I think this paint would take a bit of practice to really get to a level where you feel comfortable with it. Now, to give it respect, I am using a rather big brush. It's a 8 in this particular line. I had a favorite workhorse brush of mine that was a size 4 in that line, but I was making a Star Trek the original series bridge scale model for a friend of mine. Those of you who follow me on Instagram saw it. There was a spot of wet super glue, and I just stuck my brush right into it. And I tried to get it all off, but hey, my go-to brush chip got all messed up. So it has been recycled to be now one of my terrain brushes. Okay, third coat on the old Riptide by hand brush. So I've done airbrushing on the black, gray, and white primer, and I've used a hand brush on the black, gray, and white primer, 3 coats for each one. So I'm going to let it all dry overnight and see what the results are. Okay, so everything is thoroughly dried and you can definitely see a difference between the different undercoats. If you have just the right angle, the difference does become pretty small. And I realized that I was looking at it under my shop lights, which may not be what people would look at it under a tabletop. So I decided to try some different lights and see how it looks. So this is natural window light, like how many people would actually play in like their living rooms. While you can see the difference between the undercoats with them being right next to each other, I truthfully think that they all look pretty good in isolation from each other in this light. It also seems to be more iridescent in this natural light than under my shop LEDs. While I doubt many people play or even look at minis underneath the glaring sun outside, I figured I would see how it looks under direct sunlight. The black undercoat actually holds up to the direct light, but the gray and especially white they just don't look super hot. Okay, so while the lighter side has a shimmer that might be a neat effect, the black just looks better with 3 coats. With more and more coats, I'm sure it would work okay with the lighter color primers. And the hand brush on the black actually shows more of that green that I think that the manufacturer's kind of going for in the low spots. But I do like the appearance of the airbrush technique. So this is my only experience with TurboDORK, and it seems to be a good paint brand. It's handcrafted, and I appreciate the craftsmanship and the effort they put into it, despite the typo that was on their label. They have a whole line of paints on their website, and really, after looking at it, I'd be willing to try any of them. I especially like the witty names of the paint colors. So the bottle is also 20 milliliters, so it's slightly larger than most other paint brands. I just wish that a local hobby store had some near me so that I could see them in person before I buy it, because I don't think that their colors would necessarily transfer from the screen to real life very well. I do like this one for an aged gold. Just make sure you follow the directions on the bottle. Again, it airbrushes really nicely, and that pooling effect could look good for some type of weathering. So I was initially unsure how this would look with an entire unit as this color, so I decided to finish one off using this paint. These are XV15 stealth suits from the old Tau range. After doing several layers of the TurboDORK, I did some panel lining and then shaded with Purple Lake from Dollaroni acrylic inks. After that, I airbrushed them all with AK Interactive Streaking Grime and used a reductive highlighting technique with odorless mineral spirits. If you're not sure how to do that, I show it in my AK Interactive Streaking Grime review video. And after adding additional highlighting and shading, this paint actually looks really, really nice as the main color for a whole unit. I'm really thinking that I can use this for a unit of custodians, and it will bring in some of that tarnished old gold look to what is typically a very bright and shiny unit. So if you enjoyed this and want to see more of my work, give this video a like, follow me on Instagram at mehminipaints, and throw me a like at Facebook at mehminipainting. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.